follow up on a WSAZ investigation, conflict of interest. We told you about the Secretary of West Virginia's Department of Transportation awarding projects involving hundreds of thousands of state and federal dollars to an engineering firm that employs his son.
Well, since our initial investigation, we have asked over and over again to speak with the Secretary, Jimmy Riston, about the issue we uncovered, but all of our requests have been ignored or denied.
But the department did make a lawyer available for an interview, so we took our findings to him and asked why the Secretary has any involvement in these projects. It's an investigation we've been working on for nearly a year, obtaining and going through documents that show this man, West Virginia Department of Transportation Secretary Jimmy Riston, awarding projects involving hundreds of thousands of state and federal dollars to the consulting firm that employs Jimmy's son. That firm is Michael Baker International. This is Jimmy's son's LinkedIn page, which shows he has worked for the company as a civil engineer for more than 15 years. Here's the problem. We found under the Federal Code of Regulations, in the section pertaining to conflict of interest, no employee, officer, or agent of the contracting agency shall participate in selection or in the award or administration of a contract supported by federal aid funds, if a conflict of interest, real or apparent, would be involved. Such a conflict arises when there is a financial or other interest in the consultant selected for award by any member of his or her immediate family, an organization that employs or is about to employ any of the above. The regulation goes on to state a contracting agency shall promptly disclose in writing any potential conflict of interest to FHWA. So we sent the Federal Highways Administration a Freedom of Information Act request for any and all written notices submitted by current W.Va DOH Secretary Jimmy Riston under his current and previous roles in the agency regarding a potential conflict of interest, real or apparent. We received a response from FHWA stating their search revealed no responsive records. Before my initial investigation aired, and since then, I've repeatedly asked to speak with Secretary Riston, but all of my requests have been ignored or denied. I even asked the governor to sit down with me multiple times.
Myself and my assistant news director have reached out to your chief of staff and your communications team multiple times, but I've not received a response from any member of your team. Did you know I've been reaching out, and can I have the opportunity to meet with you and show you the documents that I have?
Make one more run at my chief of staff, and if you can't get satisfied there, you're welcome to come talk to me.
So that's exactly what we did. We showed the governor's office the documents we obtained, which they took to the Department of Transportation. But to answer our questions, we weren't allowed to speak with Secretary Riston. Instead, they gave us Nate Tawney, a department lawyer. We've asked to speak with Secretary Riston several times. This is a story that's involving him. We would like to speak with him. I've put in that request to the Department of Transportation, Department of Highways, and also to the governor's office. Why am I sitting here with you today instead of Secretary Riston?
They asked me to come talk to you. I think a lot of it they thought dealt with the legal side on the conflict of interest, and wanted to send me to handle that. Otherwise, I'm just.
Is he not available? Is he not available to make time for us? Since, again, we want to give him the fairness in being able to say, this is a story about you, we'd like to get your side.
I understand, but I was not part of the decision. I came as asked to speak with you today, you know, as far as who and when they want to make themselves available, I'll have to defer to them. I'll pass on your request.
One of the reasons we wanted to speak with Secretary Riston involves these documents we obtained, showing the Glenville Truss Bridge project was awarded to Michael Baker International, Inc. for consulting in April of 2021. On those documents, Jimmy Riston's name appears not once, but twice, stating as part of the Standing Selection Committee, members prepared a short list for selection. The document goes on to state who the voting members were, and Jimmy Riston's name appears at the top of the list. For our initial investigation, a spokesperson would not make the secretary available to us. But the following day, I received a response, calling my reporting into question, even asking for a retraction. saying, "Our engineering division pulled records and verified that Secretary Wriston did not sit on committees for Glenville Truss Bridge as you incorrectly reported." The spokesperson went on to name 5 people who sat on the selection panel for the Glenville Truss Bridge. But remember those documents we obtained? Only one of the names the spokesperson provided in her email matches the documents. So we responded, thanking her for sending the names, but informing her the department's signed documentation tells a much different story. A few days later, WSAZ received 3 signed affidavits from that same spokesperson. But again, only one of the 3 names provided this time matched the original names the spokesperson emailed us, a discrepancy I showed Nate during our interview. Do you see how this is not clearing anything up for me? In terms of her calling my reporting into question?
Well,
there's one affidavit.
Yeah, on the Glenville Trust, I thought there were, I thought that issue had been run to ground.
I find it to be suspicious that 2 days after my story airs, this document that I have about the Glenville Trust, it's saying it's completely wrong. He wasn't there, although I have his signature, I have his initials on it, and only one affidavit that's matching. So to me, that's why it's not. Can you understand why I don't feel that issue's been run into the ground?
I thought that issue had been run to ground. I didn't spend a lot of time pouring over those. My understanding is he didn't serve on those selection committees. He has not served on a selection committee that involved Michael Baker.
While the department now contends Wriston didn't serve on the selection committee for that project, we did confirm Wriston played a role in the process that led to Michael Baker's selection. Jimmy Wriston was on the shortlist committee, correct?
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure sitting here right now.
Because that would have picked the 3 that were ultimately picked for the selection committee.
That would have
received the
whittled it down to the 3 that then go on.
Just to reiterate, you're unclear if he was on
I'd prefer to check just to make sure.
Okay. I'll follow up with you if that's okay. So I did follow up via email after my interview with Nate about Secretary Wriston serving on the Glenville Trust Shortlist Committee. Nate responded saying, then Deputy Secretary Wriston did sit on the shortlist committee for Glenville Trust. The committee of 5 would together have scored 28 qualified consultants based on professional qualifications, specialized experience, technical competence, capacity, past performance, and location and knowledge of locality. The top 3 scores would then be shortlisted to go through the selection committee process. Mr. Wriston did not serve on the selection committee. So I asked for the score sheets. Nate responded to my request saying, I'm sorry, but the scoring sheet is an internal and deliberative document that we do not make public. As for those disclosures Federal Highways requires to be filed in an apparent conflict of interest, we asked who is responsible for the oversight. Is this disclosure not being filed the Secretary's fault, or is this an attorney like yourself's fault?
I think this, in this situation, if you are correct that something in writing should have been given to the local office, it's something that was not considered a conflict, is definitionally not a conflict under state law. You've come in and pointed, oh, you were supposed to do this under the federal law. Okay, that issue has been raised. We will consult with them. We will look into how they construe it. If they believe something needs to go, as we have now started to do, we'll continue to do that.
About 30 minutes into our interview, there came a knock at the door. At the end of January, do we need to get that?
I don't know. You guys need me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was told you were needed for another meeting.
Okay. I'll be about. Okay. Let's finish this one, and I gotta go.
WSAZ's Assistant News Director, Kristen Bentley, stood in on the interview and wanted to ask a few more questions before Nate left.
There's a lot of documents there. There's a lot of documents, and so, my question always goes back to,
when there's smoke, is there fire?
well, should his name have been on any of these documents? I mean, the supplemental agreements are literally just his signature, no one else's.
Right. So the selection is made by a selection committee, and he, as the Commissioner of Highways Secretary, is the one with the authority to sign the contract.
Which means if he doesn't.
Let me finish, please. Secretary Wriston does take a very hands-on approach. Bird White, for example, delegated to Secretary Riston for some of the more technical things, the ability to sign. Secretary Riston does keep a hands-on approach. He wants to see what contracts are coming through. He wants to know what's going on, and that's his way of helping understand and keep his finger on the pulse of this agency.
Okay. But if he doesn't sign the contracts, they don't get awarded, right?
Right.
So then he is involved with all of these Michael Baker contracts.
He does finally execute them, yes.
Is that appropriate, would be my question.
Yes, and we will continue to consult with FHWA. If they want something else to happen, we will cross that bridge.
After the interview, we asked Patrick McGinley, a professor at WVU College of Law, his thoughts on the issue.
Avoid even the appearance of impropriety. And I think that's the problem.
Going forward, do you think he should be involved in any contracts involving Michael Baker?
No. Whether the law requires him to step away or not, when people in West Virginia see that the secretary of this department is involved in deciding what consultant to hire and pay millions of dollars, then he doesn't have to be involved when one of the firms under consideration employs his son.
After our initial investigation aired, Nate did tell us the department is now filing disclosures with FHWA regarding Secretary Riston and his son's employment. We've filed federal and state document requests to obtain those disclosures, but we still have not received them. Once we have those disclosures, we will be working to learn what will change for the West Virginia Department of Transportation regarding Secretary Riston's involvement in contracts, awards, and renewals with Michael Baker International, Inc.